The Knights of Ren podcast is brought to you by Cool Stuff Inc., your source for Star Wars Destiny singles, sealed product, and more. Check them out at coolstuffinc.com.
Show me again the power of the darkness.
D20 Radio, where gamers roll. D20radio.com.
I've been running scams on the street since I was 10.
Welcome, everybody, back to the Knights of Ren podcast. This is Taxter. I'm leading the charge here today. And with me is Mr. Sugi and Todd and Rick.
Oh, come on.
I thought that was legal.
No.
Oh,
no,
you said Taxter was leading the charge. He told me I could.
No.
Right. Hey, guys.
Oh, no. Oh man.
What's up?
Oh, boy. You always make me work harder for some odd reason.
We can just do it all again. Let's get Tax. That was Taxter's warm up, man.
I'm not doing that again.
No, he's not doing it again. We're already in this, man.
All right.
It's too late.
All right.
It's too late, dude.
My bad. Sorry, guys.
Good job, Nick.
Yeah. Good. That was a good intro. That was just a bad response from Todd.
It was solid. His intro, not my response.
Oh yeah, yeah. The intro was great. Todd was just terrible.
My bad.
Utini.
Yeah, that's definitely gonna have to happen.
So we had regionals, huh?
So we had a bunch of regionals. I heard.
Yeah, Nick had a big one. We had one. You guys had a spot gloss. Why don't we just get started and you tell us a little bit about your regional out in the middle of nowhere?
The middle of nowhere. The middle of the West.
The middle of the West, yeah.
Well, Midwest. But it was, in our hometown store. And it was snowing all day, so it was an awful road conditions going home for everybody that had to go far away. I apologize for that. But we had a good show on it. It was like 76 people, I think.
It's pretty good.
We had like 90 or so signed up beforehand, but still made up 7. Pretty good.
I guess mine was in the middle of nowhere then. We had less than you did.
Yeah. Anything over anything you can get to 8 rounds, I feel like is where it feels like a good spot for the regional size. 7 or 8 rounds at least. Top 8 cut still. I don't know how small you have to be to get a top 4 cut, but it was pretty big. I think there was 25, probably a third of the field was our local people or people that have played locally in the past, even if they don't come every day. So there's a lot of people I know just from all around. There's a lot of people coming from Milwaukee, which is an hour and a half away, people from upper Wisconsin. And then we had 5 people come from the FFG event center over in Minneapolis area. So a lot of people I recognize, and definitely the fiercest part of the crowd, I think, was the Minnesota people who were, brought with them 3 of the other top 16 people from Worlds. So that's pretty scary.
Seems like a good turnout for a regional. There. You got probably 4, 5, 6 of the top 16 there. Is that?
There's I think there's 5 total, 4 to 5. I guess the big thing there, though, was the fact that I had to face 4 of the 5 people from Minnesota in my Swiss rounds. Wow. And that was absolutely brutal. And it was 8 rounds. I played 4 of the 5 Minnesota people. I had a bye, so I really only had 3 rounds where I didn't play them. I played 1 local guy and then 2 other people. So it's wow. They were pretty much running, the Minnesota people were running them. 2 of them were running Mel, 2 of them were running Boba Phasma, and 1 was running Poe Hondo. I didn't play the Poe Hondo, but I beat both the Boba Phasmas and lost to both of the mill decks because I was playing hero vehicles, and that matchup is so egregiously awful that as much as I really love the hero vehicles deck, if I know that mill's going to be popular, I don't know if I can ever actually take it to a major thing again, because if you ever thought a game felt unwinnable against an equally skilled opponent, that is probably one of the few times I have felt that way.
So what slights it so much into the mill's favor against you? Where's the disconnect?
Unless things just have to kind of go perfectly in terms of your damage and their removal. It's just so hard with your starting character die and ramping up into vehicles to actually keep them off of shields going into new rounds. So basically felt like no matter what I did, I could not stop eRieekan from milling 2 every round until my deck was gone or until something died. And I think in the 4 matches, I killed a character in 2 of them. I tried to kill the partisan first, but a lot of the damage from the vehicle deck does turn out to be indirect, not all of it, but like a good bit of it is. And versus a deck that a ton of shields like that, it's really easy for them to just kind of like soak it up where they need be. Honestly, like killing eRieekan first is kind of the easiest option in the sense of they usually put a few damage on eRieekan just to preserve shields on the other guys to get that extra mill off. And then at the end, it's like, well, I can't kill anything, but I guess I can kill eRieekan, but I only have like 2 cards in my deck left, so it doesn't really matter. Like there's no re-rolling that I get to do. If they get 3PO out on round 1, which I think they did every game, I feel like helpless. If I had been playing with Vandalizes, I think it could have helped some, but I don't know. It's just a rough matchup, and it has a lot of good removal on its own, so it's really hard. Like a lot of times it'd be like roll out Ayla, can't stick my dice because it either gets easy pickings or garbage shoot. Like if your highest damaging character rolls out in the first few rounds and you hit basically nothing with it, it really sucks.
So tell us a little bit about the decks you saw at the tournament, what was doing well, what wasn't doing well, and any kind of unique or strange or even like bizarre stuff.
I don't know if there's anything too crazy unique near the top tables. We had no OTK. There's absolutely 0 people playing OTK in Madison, for what that's worth. I don't even think there's anyone playing like Sabine Ezra, which is crazy. Like these 2 decks that are winning the week after, there's nobody playing them. Just like Hero Vehicles wasn't really a big thing the week before. Like this meta is just crazy shifting. Like it's just like this week plays this, and then we play new decks that beat those decks. And like it's crazy. But there wasn't anything too crazy in Madison. One of our local guys is running Thrawn Talzin, and he almost made the cut. Ooh. I had the unfortunate duty of stopping him from making the cut in order to make it myself. But that was scary though, because he was running rocket launchers.
Why would you do that
with a vehicle deck? You know, that could have been awful. But yeah, I think Thrawn is almost in a playable spot now. But if it shifts back to super aggro, I don't think he will be, because you still don't got a lot of health. Yeah, so trying to think what was the most common. There was a good bit of Sister Tarkin from outside our meta. A few people locally were playing it. In our top 8, it was pretty diverse. Kind of had, I think the only thing we had 2 of was Poe Hondo. I think there was a lot of Poe Hondo actually, because it was the week after the Portland Regional where Poe Hondo won it. But there just I just didn't play any of them, and 2 of them made it to the top cut. So it was around, but it was not just stomping people either. A few Kylo Talzins were around. We had 1 Zeb Yoda that made the cut. A few Obi Mazes. Obi Mazes do pretty well too. So, there wasn't anything too crazy. There was just a lot of decks doing solid stuff. Nothing that really completely just stomped over everything other than that mill deck, kind of. And even then, it lost a few times. And I think each of the mill players lost in Swiss to some kind of aggressive deck.
Yeah, we kind of talked about it a little bit this weekend too. The meta is kind of shaping up to, like, there's a heavy showing of decks that from the week before that won, but the top 8 gets a couple of those in, and then the winner is something different. And that's been this kind of consistent from week to week since Legacy's hit, where, one deck shows up, wins, then a lot of people play it the next week that don't win, and then the one that wins that is pretty good at that deck. And that's kind of like what we've always kind of wanted to see anyways, people taking a look at what's good right now, and then teching or getting reps in against it, learning how to beat it, then taking a deck that would beat a heavy represented deck the next week. Obviously it's going to settle out at some point here. Hopefully, once we get to that point, we get rivals to kind of shake it up a little bit. Maybe something happens with the balance of the force or something along those lines that changes things a little bit more, and we kind of keep through a cycling meta throughout the season, working up in the worlds. But yeah, it sounds like you guys up there had pretty similar showing, or last week is what we're seeing, and then going into what we're going to talk about next, it kind of follows.
So was there anything in particular you think might be impacted by rivals based on the meta you saw out there, Nick?
The only things I can think of, like in rivals, that are really going to add anything are Hidden Motive, which I think is a good card, but it doesn't belong in every deck that runs blue necessarily. And then we have Bespin Wingguard, which could just be that thing that pushes the mill decks over the edge. I haven't tested much with it, so I haven't really seen how it actually feels in practice, but it just seems like one of the kind of things that Hero Mill really needed. Other than that, almost all the other upgrades and just cards kind of suck in Rivals. Like, there's cards that would be decent for draft, but are just pretty bad. And I do not think that Anakin Kylo is going to be even remotely good enough to play compared to having played Talzin Kylo. I don't know that Anakin Kylo has it in it. We'll see. People will probably make it happen, but I don't think it's going to be the big bad that people would dream about when they announced it.
Yeah, I think that Anakin, he's kind of right on the edge. There may be something that can be built to abuse his special ability, but yeah, like Talzin with Kylo, I played that this week. I mean, it seems like it's a pretty good version of that deck. I mean, granted, you don't lock yourself into the odd cost when you're using Anakin, so that means it opens you up to the lightsabers more than the holocron package. But it does kind of lock you into wanting to play more of the villain cards, and there's a lot of good neutral stuff right now. So yeah, I mean, he seems like something might happen with him, but I can't really wrap my head on him being what we thought he might be when we first saw him.
Yeah, I'd agree with that 100%.
I mean, we're going to work with him.
Yeah.
We're going to see what he can do. We're going to try and push him to its limits, but I don't know yet. And then Hidden Motive, I think what we saw with Hidden Motive was, what kind of heroes needed to get a little bit boost in the mitigation area, which Hero Yellow just got a crazy influx of really good removal.
Yeah, I mean, that's the thing right now, right? Like, a card for one die just doesn't seem as efficient as it used to anymore. So, yeah, I totally agree with that. But I don't know. I mean, I guess if you're running Confidence, it would fill that spot, right? Pull a Confidence and put that in if you're playing blue. Like, I mean, but I don't know why you'd be playing that right now.
Yeah, and that's kind of what I mean. Like, if you're playing Hero Yellow and you also have blue in there, I don't know if you need Hidden Motive. I know it costs 0, but I'd still rather pay 1 and remove 2 dice than the chance of maybe removing 1 die.
I was kicked out of the flight academy for having a mind of my own.
Throw me the segue. Well, if you want to talk about Confidence, that's actually a card that we did see play out here in Miami. So I really enjoyed our regional. It was a really, really interesting event because there was a lot of unique stuff that hit the table. There was a lot of stuff that we were totally expecting. So we saw hero vehicles, we saw hero mill. We did not, I believe there was 1, maybe 2 OTK decks, but I'm pretty sure there was only 1. And there was also only 1 or 2 Kylo Talzins. There wasn't much Kylo 2. There wasn't hardly any OTK. There was 1 Poe Hondo that did kind of linger around the top tables, but it didn't make the top cut. And there was hilariously a ton of Boba 7th Sister. So before we keep going, you may or may not have been watching the Facebook page, but the team from Tampa brought this really unique homebrew that we've never seen before at any regional. And it was credited to their team and Mitchell Brantley, who's the guy who actually invented the deck. And the story goes, he wanted to build Boba Phasma, but didn't have the cards for it. So he just built Boba's sister instead, and it happened to work. And so they just decided that they were going to test and play that out. And we have a deck profile with Zach, the guy who made it to top 8. But that was by far the most represented deck because I believe they brought like 11 or 13, 14
Holy
people.
crap.
And they all, yeah. So they basically brought.
That's insane. Like, so an entire meta took the same deck.
Yeah.
That's crazy.
There's 53 players, and of those 53 players, like 11 to 15 of them are playing the exact same deck.
I don't know how you can do that. Like, I could not do that personally. Like, if I knew that there were that many people playing the same deck, I would panic switch to a new deck because I hate playing, especially if they're like kinds that can be super volatile like that. Like, well, oh man, that's
I don't know if that's a good selling point for the deck because 11 to 15 people played it and only one of them made the top 8. Now, granted, they're probably cannibalizing the crap out of themselves with all this.
Well, I was about to say that. So the first round, a lot of them got paired up against each other. I saw.
If you make up a fifth of the meta, that makes sense that you'd probably see.
Yeah. I know at least 6 of them got paired up against each other. And the worst part was the winners of those matches got paired up against the winners from the previous match. So the first 3 rounds was almost pure self-cannibalization. So Zach Neward was the only one who actually went 3-0 and kept pushing into the top cut. The rest of them were like 1-0, 1-1 and then like 1-2, and they just never made it up. And it was just really, it was kind of sad because I liked the deck, I liked the team, like the guys were amazing. It was fun to talk to the Tampa Bay guys. And then it was just kind of like after round 3, hey, how are you doing? Yeah, I'm 1-2. I'm 1-2. I'm 2-1. Like most people weren't actually in a good place. And I would ask them, like what happened? They're like, well, I played the mirror. And I'm like, oh, that sucks so much. So it's a cool story, but like mathematically, it was just a painful experience because they just got really unlucky and they kind of killed each other off.
Yeah, I mean, I generally like if you're working with a team, like the people can figure out what they feel is the best deck for a tournament, and they should probably play that. But that stops at about, you can't go to a third of the field doing that, right? You kind of have to limit yourself to maybe 4, right? 5 people.
We have a hard time coming to terms and playing the same deck ourselves. Like in 16, 20-man store championships, like we don't even like to play the same decks at those.
Me and you generally will come to an agreement that this deck we think is very good, and we generally play that with probably 2 to 3 different cards in the deck, right? Like when we go to big events, right? Yeah. And I mean that's fair, but good Lord, a third of the field. like you're just going to eat yourself alive doing that, right?
I feel like you should have had a tournament where you said, all right, everybody, only bring this deck.
Yeah.
Let's go ahead and prepare for that.
And then the one guy that changes that knows the mirror, right? Like he ends up, yes, everybody, play this deck. Mm-hmm. And I will put this one card in that we know hoses us, and then, that
would be me.
And I'm going to make the cut. Right. But no, I mean, I like that they went in as a team, all 52 of them, and played the same deck. But yeah, that's crazy. I mean, I'm with you. I can't stand playing mirrors. Like when like it was all R2P2, I was like, can something beat this, right? So we can just I want to, if I want to go to a tournament, do I just take the best deck, or do I try to find something that beats it, and then I can't find anything to beat it, and I'm not going to play the mirror? So you know what I do? I'm not going to the tournament.
Yeah.
Not even going to waste that 6-hour drive on that.
I liked R2P2.
You like the mirror?
I love the mirrors. I didn't lose them.
I don't think that the mirror for R2P2 is one I would hate nearly as much as some other decks.
Yeah, I agree with that.
It shouldn't be as blowouty as it can be in other ones. And there's at least some interesting decision points you can make that can give you an edge.
So Sugi, what happened at the regional, man?
Yeah, so that's the coolest story of the day. When you're going into the tournament, you obviously have a weird situation where there's a bunch of buys on top of an odd number. So as we go through each round, nobody actually dropped for a long time. I don't think anyone pulled out until like round maybe 6. And it was cool, but it was also kind of because the event happened in Miami, and I don't know many people, if any, who were actually local to Miami that showed up. So who was
the 11 people then, if they weren't the Miami people?
They were Tampa.
Tampa people. No. So the event was in Miami. The 11 to 15 players were from Tampa. Orlando brought in, I think, 8 or 9.
Sorry, I got confused because when you said that bit, I was thinking that was where all the locals.
Yeah, Orlando. I don't know exactly how many Orlando players there were, but I can account for at least 7 or 8. So we'll say 8 or 9. So between Tampa and Orlando, that's almost 20 plus players. So, you're looking at half the field is from those two crews. And then there were 5 or 6 from here, 5 or 6 from there. So there's all these small groups of people that came, and they all brought different things. So it was interesting because we saw really unique decks like a Tarkin Jabba mill deck that, it did really well up until round 4. You saw a top 8 Tarkin sister deck. There were, Swamp Things, so Yoda, Zeb, obviously the standard stock Hero Mill, Hero Vehicles. We saw a Sabine Ezra, which that's what won the whole thing. We did see some Sabine Yoda, and those were few and far between, but one Sabine Yoda did make it into the top cut, and it did get cannibalized by the Sabine Ezra. And then, like I said, there was no OTK. There's really no OTK presence. There was no Kylo presence. There were some interesting interesting decks. Like there was a Jabba Newt Night Sister deck that really pushed through, and I believe it got like 10 or 11th place just because of SOS. Just because when you go to 7 rounds and then the top cut, like half of your X and 2s just don't make it. So it's kind of frustrating because even though you lost twice, depending on who you lost to, you just don't make the cut. So I was like, that's a bummer. We did have 0 undefeateds. That was an interesting thing that happened. At the very end of round 6, Andrew Cox, who was piloting the Sabine Ezra deck, lost to Andrew, I believe it's Leadbeater, who beat him with hero vehicles. But then he lost to the guy, I believe, playing Sabine Yoda. So there were 0 7-0s. So there were 2 6-1s. And then a couple 5 and 2s, which did help the 5 and 2s since there was no undefeated.
There were no 8-0s at Madison either, I don't think. No, right. There might have been one. I don't know. It's hard to say. There could have easily not been one.
I believe I heard someone say there was a Talzin TIE Pilot. I didn't see that one, but that's probably the most interesting deck that I heard of for the day. So there was a couple. I did see some of Eric Wainwright's Padawans and Ayla. There was the classic Poe, Ayla. There was, I mean, everything you've seen, be it We Talk About It or Reddit or Artificery or whatever, like
there's at least some
all
of those.
The decks that all the decks you've expected and you've heard about were there. And then, there was the kind of offshoot stuff. Like I said, Jabba Tarkin did well. And then you have the Tarkin 7th Sister, which was kind of like, whoa, that's interesting. But unfortunately, and we talked to the guy who played it in the interview, he was saying that, Sabine is just like the hard counter to that deck. And he has very little shield mitigation or very little shield generation. He has some die mitigation, but it's hard to deal with when you get hit with the RI lock or, Sabine to Sabine things and just rolls crazy numbers. And, you can take 1 or 2 of those dice away, but you can't stop, out of 12 damage showing, you can maybe stop 3, possibly 6, but that just adds up real quick. So like the overall experience was really unique. It was one of the most unique metas we've seen and I've heard of because most of the tournaments, other than like maybe Portland, were kind of stock. Like people knew what to expect. They brought the safe, they brought the, powerful. And this one was like, there's a lot of Boba 7th Sister. that was like the thing you saw at every table. Like somebody had a Boba 7th Sister and it would either do really well or do really poorly because it's, basically Django Veers 4.0. Like it rolls really hot, you're dead, or it just doesn't get what it needs and you're like, oh, that's kind of bad. So that's the setup to get into the regional, the rounds and the cut. So I was doing judging. I was obviously taking pictures and doing media. I knew most of the players at the top tables, be it someone from Tampa or Orlando, because they just sat up there like the whole day. So I tried not to interfere and watch, like unless someone called for a judge, I just kind of let them do their thing because, I don't want to give anything away. If I see a bad play or I see something in someone's hand, like I try not to watch games while I'm judging just because I don't want to know until the game is over and, get the recap from them. And so there was a lot of downtime just to kind of hang out and talk to people as they would win, they would lose, they would get up and start to walk around. So it was a very enjoyable experience. I met a lot of new players. I met a lot of people who I'd seen before at other events, but never really had the time to talk to. So it was a really fun event. But like the later the day went, the only thing that we were kind of tracking was the Boba 7th Sister, just because there were so many of them. And like I said, they started to kind of fall off as we got past round 3, but it also became a problem for like the Tarkin Jabba. It started to hit some of the heavy hitters that, it just really had bad matchups against. Like once you get past like round 3, round 4, you can kind of tell like the newer players or people who are still learning the game or not doing particularly well. They were kind of falling into the lower tables, and the players who knew what they were doing and were more experienced were starting to hit the high tables. So then you started to see a lot of the skill players start to kind of cannibalize each other because they were forced to play, the 3-0s, the 4-0s, and then you start to see, a 4-1 or a 5-2 or a 6-0. And it was really interesting because Sabine was always at the top tables. So you saw Sabine Yoda, you saw Sabine Ezra, and those were really punching through. But you also saw the vehicles. There was a lot of vehicles hitting the tables. Like in the top 8, 2 were hero vehicles, and then the rest were different decks, which was cool because out of the top 8, 7 decks were unique. And there was only 1 duplicate, and it was 2 hero vehicles. But like the 2 guys who were in the top cut, they were sitting at the top tables all day. And then there was, I believe, 1 other hero vehicles player and 1 other mill player that were coming and going from the top tables. And unfortunately, they made some really, really funny play mistakes that cost them the game because they didn't know that if you go to time, like tiebreakers are damage dealt or health left, however you want to look at it, and then cards in hand, cards in deck, and then who has the battlefield. There were a couple games where 2 mill decks would have the mirror match, and someone didn't know that if you were both milled out, the winner was the person who had the battlefield. And so they thought it was based on damage dealt, so they didn't care about claiming.
Yeah,
the opponent
I've
claimed
seen that happen too. Like where people are like, the time tiebreaker rules has nothing to do with winning the game on mill.
Right. That actually happened 2 separate times in 2 separate games where the person who unfortunately did not know the rules lost because they just didn't know. And it felt so bad because if you hear them tell the recap of the game, they basically had won and they just kept passing because they had no reason to claim because they felt, it doesn't matter. And, the opponent claims and they lose. And they were really upset because, had they just taken the claim action, they would have won the game. But, feels bad. So those were some really interesting things happening in the Swiss because, I get this judge call, hey, who wins in this situation? I'm like, yeah, the person on the battlefield. They're like, no, that's not the way. They're like, it's damage. I'm like, no, it's the person on the battlefield. I can show you. And, we pull out the paper and they're like, oh my God, I made a mistake. I made a huge error.
Yeah, I had to, in Friday's tournament, I had to show that to people too. Like people just are so caught up in the go into time tiebreakers that they forget about the the tiebreaker of when both people lose, right? Mm-hmm. It's in the rules. Look it up. Know your rules. You'll win.
You might not win still.
Yeah, you might not, but it helps.
It does help.
Well, it's really annoying when you set yourself up to win and you make one mistake based off of information you didn't have or didn't know.
Well, they have the information.
Well, I mean, and I told them, you could have raised your hand and asked for, what's the ruling or how does this work? And they're like, I didn't think about that. I'm like, I know, it sucks. I'm sorry. I feel so bad.
But obviously, you can't bring that up if you're by the table, right? So,
oh no, I wasn't by the table.
They have to know that. They have to know that, or they have to ask for.
Yeah.
The rules. Right?
Yeah, I was sitting on the other side of the room just waiting and watching for someone to call for a judge. Otherwise, I was doing social media and stuff. But those are the most interesting kind of tales from the Swiss. That was basically, it was a standard tournament. Everyone played, a couple judge questions, nothing crazy. So then we go to the cut. So, we go to dinner, we hang out. There was 5 guys and all of us, all 8 of us went. And then some of the Tampa guys came and I was able to hang out with, you may or may not have seen, but we did some deck profiles with the team from Jackalmen Games. Super nice guys. Really great. We'll have to have them on because they know the game. They love the game. It's a growing YouTube show, but I mean, they're really solid guys. I think you'd enjoy having them on. So we hang out, have dinner, go back, and the matchups are Sabine Ezra versus Tarkin Sister. The Obi Moss player faced Hero Vehicles. Andrew Larcher, who went second, placed against Hero Vehicles, which, of course, we had been testing the last week and a half. So he was really happy about that matchup because, as we all know, that's a really favorable matchup for Mill.
Did it go as well as he would have hoped then?
Well, I'll tell that story. There are some interesting things that happened in the cut. And then it was Boba 7's sister versus Sabine Yoda. So they start the cut and I fired off a draft from my cube. We started playing. Now, we were having some fun. I've been testing this epic version of Destiny from the cube, which is 40 cards in the deck, 40 points for building the team, and you get 3 resources per turn. Now, this is pure casual. There is 0 competitive value to this, but it's really fun because you also get 8 packs to draft from, including your rival stuff. So there's a lot more cards, a lot more options, and some crazy insane things you can do. So anyways, I'm firing off a pod. We're hanging out, and then 15 minutes into the 90-minute match, Andrew Cox with his Sabine Ezra just stands up and it's over. So he ran through the Tarkin 7 Sister deck in 2 games fairly quickly, maybe 20 minutes, but it was very, very short. So he gets up, he starts walking around, we start talking to, the guy, get his deck profile from the Tarkin sister. And then at that point, unfortunately, Zach lost to the Sabine Yoda. So that match is done. And it's still game 1 for the Hero Mill versus the Hero Vehicles. And there's 35 minutes gone. fun. And I mean, it was almost done, but I don't think they finished until like the 45 minute mark. The hero vehicles on the other side playing against Obi Maz was in game 2. So that one was almost finished. So everything wraps up. You know, we have Sabine Ezra wins, Sabine Yoda wins, and those two are going to get paired off. The hero vehicles deck wins, and then the hero of Mill takes the win with, I think, like 15 minutes left. So now, once again, Andrew is really excited that he gets to match up against another hero vehicles deck because that is a severely favorable matchup for him. So obviously he was excited about that. And you know, Andrew Cox had to go up against the other Sabine deck. So that was a really fast match. So we're in the top 4. This one, I kid you not, I think they were done. The Sabine matchup was done in like 10 or 15 minutes, and that's 2 games.
Wow.
So those went stupid fast. But we went to time on the hero vehicles versus hero mill. So Andrew Cox got like an 80-minute respite between matches. So that was the interesting thing. I didn't watch it because I couldn't bring myself to see it, but I was like listening. We were doing deck profiles and things. We were live streaming. So Hero Mill wins game 1. It was very close, but he takes the win. They're 15 minutes into round 2, and Andrew decides to concede because he's not in a place to decisively win, and he knows if he can get a foothold in game 3, he'll win, but he didn't want to lose the time being spent in game 2.
Yeah, because if you actually have to go to game 3 and you go to time, you're going to just lose.
Yeah, so he knew that it was a worthy sacrifice to concede and go to game 3, which was absolutely important because if he hadn't have done that, he would have lost to damage because when they went to time, he was able to mill out the vehicle deck to win the game, just barely. And so long story short, like there was a lot of lines of play. There's a lot of things that happened, but what happened at the very, very end of the game for round 3 was a very similar situation with the mill mirror I had mentioned earlier. So Andrew mills out the vehicle deck. They have no cards in hand, no cards in the deck. They roll out their damage, and they are 1 damage short from killing Andrew. Andrew has 1 card in his hand. They do not claim, they just resolve the damage. Andrew claims and wins the game because they're out of cards. And then after that match, it was brought up if the if the vehicle player had claimed, he would have, it was...
Oh, was he on War-Torn Streets, so he would have just won?
They were on War-Torn Streets. Andrew had the mill deck had 1 card left in his hand, no cards left in his deck.
Man.
So if the vehicle player had have claimed instead of resolving his dice, he would have won the game because he would have taken the last card out of Andrew's hand, and then he would have won because he had the battlefield. But he admitted that he thought it was damage as well, and it was his face just like sunk. So he lost he lost the game. He lost in top 4. So then it was Mill versus Sabine. That game was over in like 15-20 minutes. They, you know, Sabine does Sabine things, and I believe Andrew said like she like god rolled twice in both games, so he was able to snipe out, you know, just whoever he wanted. I think I could be wrong, but I think in game 1 like eRieekan was gone turn 1, and then like turn 2 Partisan was gone. Like it was probably not going to happen. So so that was the end of it all. The Sabine Ezra deck, piloted by Andrew Cox, took number 1. Andrew Larcher took number 2 with Hero Mill. So it was really cool. Actually, 3rd place was another Andrew. It was I don't know his last name, how to say it. It's like Ledbetter. They're all Orlando guys. So it was really cool to see our meta do excessively well. Christian was also another Orlando player from the cool stuff we go to. So he was top 8. So it was really nice. We had a lot of fun. The payout for winning was insane. Andrew Cox got 2 booster boxes of legacies, and the second place got a box and a half on top of the prize support from FFG. So they were walking out with a lot of stuff. It was pretty cool. So the big takeaway from this event was that homebrew decks can do very well, and we can prove that because in the top 8, we had a Boba 7 sister deck that did very well. Of course, Zach Neward, like the pilot, was extremely talented. He knows his games. He knows his matchups very well. And then Tarkin Talzin did extremely well on top of that. Now, I need to clarify. I might have said Tarkin's sister. If I'm sorry, that was incorrect. It was a Tarkin Talzin deck. Now, like that pilot openly admitted like Sabine is the worst matchup for that deck. So having to face that in the top cut was probably inevitable, but having to go up against it in the first round of the top 8, that just really stunk. So I think it's really neat that not only are we seeing decks that are, I guess, quote unquote established, even though it's only been like 2 or 3 weeks in the meta, we're not even a month in, and we still have this really wide and diverse deck archetype. Like the top 8 decks were Sabine Ezra, Tarkin Talzin, Hero Vehicles, Obi Maz, Hero Mill, Hero Vehicles again, Boba's sister, and Sabine Yoda. That's really cool. I don't think we've seen that since maybe Awakenings, because like we did not see that in Spirit.
Not even. There aren't even that many decks in Awakenings comparatively, I feel like.
I mean, we might have seen like 3 or 4, but I mean, like the variety was popular back then. And then once we got into SOR and EAW, like it was pretty much like 3, maybe 3 decks. And right now we are seeing so many things do exceedingly well. And even with OTK, like we're seeing OTK with either a Night Sister or a Guavian, Sabine Ezra, Sabine Yoda. You've got Zeb Yoda, the Swamp Thing. There's just a lot of stuff. Oh, someone was playing Zeb and Ray 1, and they were just doing action shenanigans.
Yeah, I mean, that seems good too.
Yeah, the only problem...
That's what I thought when I first thought of Zeb.
Yeah, the only problem I was hearing, because I didn't actually find that player, and I wanted to talk to him. And if they're listening, please send us a message. I'd love to hear about the deck. But from what I understood, like they were getting either bad rolls or the mitigation game was just super ridiculous with both the easy pickings and the garbage shoot. And they were just getting turned off to the point where like they just couldn't capitalize and get the lethals. So that's something to think about. But I mean, like these metas are currently not defined, and people have, complained and said in previous places and things, oh, when you're playing on TTS, you have all these cards out for a month before the set releases, everyone's going to figure it out and the game's going to be boring. It's going to just, figure itself out by the time these cards are allowed. And why would we do that? I don't think that's the case quite yet. Like in a few weeks, we might start to see certain decks kind of rise to the top. But I mean, like right now, there isn't really a dominant deck. And like everyone was afraid of Po Hondo. There was like one of those didn't show up. Everyone's afraid of Kylo 2.
Oh, yeah. I mean, it didn't win the week before. Like it's just crazy. Like just the way everything is just rotating super fast.
Yeah, like people are afraid of Kylo 2. He's not showing up. But if Sabine Ezra becomes really popular, Kylo 2 can come back and start to crush it. Then
Kylo 2's probably a good call.
Yeah, Kylo, like that's what Andrew was deathly afraid of. He was like, if I see Kylo, I'm gonna lose because my deck is like 100% yellow with like 6 gray cards. So you're gonna get that Kylo trigger almost guaranteed. And with Kylo Talzin, you're using Talzin to help get all the damage you need, and the mitigation game isn't necessarily strong from Sabine Ezra, so you can get hit with like an easy pickings, but you only have 2 of those. And then after so many turns and Kylo's effect, you're going to take 2 to the face, you're going to roll out Kylo, you're going to throw an ancient, you're looking, and with Talzin's effect, you're looking at 2 plus 3, so that's 7 damage plus the 2 from Kylo's trigger, so that's 9. That's a dead Ezra. Or if you can punch through Sabine and they don't have the second chance, you shoot him with Talzin, you're looking at a dead Sabine turn 1. There's so many interactions, and there's a great rock paper scissors effect. So like I said, if Sabine Ezra gets popular, Kylo 2 will come back, but Kylo 2 probably has problems with Hero Vehicles, but Hero Vehicles has problems with Mill has problems with Sabine, and you start to kind of see this cycle of decks that match up well against one but not against the other. And then of course homebrews and things that people might bring in that are rogue or anti-meta. And now we finally have a game where it's not controlled by a single deck type and a single way to play. Like you have aggro, you have mid-range, you have control, and it's all really viable. So that's really what excited me the most about seeing this event and covering it was it's not dead, it's growing. It's kind of in the birthing moments where it's figuring itself out and it's kind of walking around and getting its sea legs, but it's really neat. And I really don't think we've even started to see all of the potential decks that could hit the tables, because like Boba Phasma is still a very potentially potent deck. We just haven't really seen it in play much. And anyone who's trying to keep these secret homebrew decks, we'll see them eventually. And those could disrupt everything we've talked about today too. So who knows? Like Lobot's really good. The Jawas could be good. I mean, who knows? We might see like Jawas and battle droids. I think Ketsu's really good. Anakin, I like him. I have no idea. Like I feel like he has a place, but we haven't seen it or figured it out yet. But who knows? There's so much time and so many things to play with, and we've got lots of time before Worlds.
Yeah, lots of time before Worlds. We could even see an errata wave before Worlds too. Like, and honestly, anything's possible at this point. And a bunch of galactic qualifiers. We have regionals wrapping up, and then we're going to have waves of galactic qualifiers come up, which should be the next big kind of like eye on what's going on with the meta.
Yeah, I agree.
I'm gonna be a pilot. Best in the galaxy.
Hey, kid. I'm putting together a crew.
So while we were playing our regional out in Miami, I know you guys were doing something really, really unique, Todd. So why don't you tell us a little bit about like your tournament, the prize support, and how it all went down?
Yeah. So this past Saturday, at Total Access Games, I ran what was it, 15 men?
Yeah.
We had a 15-man tournament for a spot gloss. I had a Palpatine, a Yoda, and a Maul, and pretty much it was going to be winner picks. So that was to first place. Second place, I gave out 50 in store credit and a Knights of Ren mat, and then I think it was 25 that I gave out the third. I think, right? No, 15.
15.
I split 15-15 for third and fourth. So I'd kind of pre-established that. I was hoping to have a few more people, but the rain, it was raining like crazy. The weather was horrible. So I'm just happy we had the 15 that showed up. It was a great showing, actually. We had people from Baltimore to Virginia Beach. So, I mean, we had people statewide and all the way up through Maryland. We actually had the runner-up from Nationals at Nova from Baltimore, who came down, and a couple guys in his crew. We had Minion and John from Southeast Virginia that came up. John finished runner-up at the North Carolina Regional. It was a pretty good showing, and it was a good group of people that we had. Rick played in that. Would you played the Kylo Talzin?
Yeah, I mean the night before we had a little tournament here, just kind of prepping for it, and in that I played Yoda Hondo because I really like that deck. It's fun to play. It's not fun to play against, but it's fun to play. And it wasn't doing what I wanted it to do. I added in a hyperspace jump to there for some little additional get out of jail free cards and stuff like that. But I mean the changes worked. It just wasn't consistent enough that I think would, knowing the type of people we were going to have at this tournament to go into. So I last minute audibled at like 11:30 at night to Talzin Kylo, which was fun, but I had a pretty funny interaction there. Turns out when you play 4 even cards, you can witch magic and hit 3 of them. So that kind of lost me a chance at the top 4 there, but I had 2 witch magics in hand. Kylo with 6 damage on him. He's already at rose again against Yoda Zeb, and yeah, if I hit both of those, I'm basically back to start on Kylo, and I got a pretty good chance of winning that. But first one hits three even cards. There's no point to play the second one, right? And then Kylo quickly dies after that, and I'm able to stay in it with just with just Talzin, but it's just the writing was on the wall at that point. But yeah, I really enjoyed that deck. It's a very consistent deck. First round put out 12 damage against Cad Bala. He put out 9, so that was 21 damage that we did to each other in one round. That was pretty fun. But yeah, I mean, it was a great tournament. It was really smooth. We were done by 5. Done by 5.
Yeah, started it at 12:15. Make sure, because we had a couple people running behind. Started at 12:15. Did 4 rounds of Swiss. Cut to the top 4. We had everybody done and gone by 5 to make sure everybody got home early enough that traffic wasn't going to be too much of an issue. So out of the 15 players, I've got all of the decks here. So it's a pretty interesting spread. We had a Ayla Rose Ezra, which was a vehicle deck. We had 2 Talzin Kylo decks, a Qui-Gon Yoda, a Cad Bala deck, 3 Poe Hondos, a Zeb Yoda, a 5-die villain with Talzin, and that was played by John. And then we had Bazine, Newt, and Hondo, which one of our local guys, kind of like a homebrew deck. It's really interesting because he can go 2 separate directions with it. He can go mill or he can go damage. So he's got a lot of options built into that deck just in the card choices he has. It was really interesting to play. And then this is where it gets interesting. We had 3 Yoda Chewie decks, and we had a Yoda eRieekan, eYoda. Yeah. So the top 4, what would you guys think would be the top 4 out of that?
I can't answer because I saw your post, so I know.
All right. So anyway, we had so we had 2 Chewie Yodas in the top 4. We had a Talzin Kylo and a Yoda eRieekan. And it was really interesting. All of the guys that came down from Baltimore with the runner-up at Nationals brought the Chewie Yoda deck. Very interesting deck. It plays really well against things with damage sides. Not, however, so good against mill decks.
Nope.
No.
So yeah. Once it got to the top 4, the Yoda eRieekan kind of had its way. And in the finals, we had one of our local players, Michael Campbell. He actually was playing Talzin Kylo. It was Kylo Talzin against the Yoda Reichen deck, and the Yoda Reichen took it 2-0.
Wow.
So yeah, it was a very interesting deck, that Minion had. He came up here and went undefeated with the mill deck.
Tell us a little bit
Yeah,
about
there's
that
something
build.
there about Yoda Reichen. Like, I know Agent of Zion and I were trying it out like really early on, or I more played against it than with it. Played a little bit of Yoda Lando too. Like, it's very different from like the 3-character wide one, which is super beefy. It doesn't do as much with its character dice, but like Reichen Yoda is just all shields. It gets a bunch of money, it gets a bunch of shields. It does its best to hold on with 2 characters and still mill you out while it can.
Well, and the shield cards go farther in it because you're only spreading them across 2 characters.
Yep.
So you're getting a lot more value out of those, like the entrenches and cards like that, because you don't have 3 characters that you have to support. And
you can run Force Meditation though. It's the big one that you don't really run in like the 3-character the mill list. The ones that basically let you just chew through the deck even faster than you can ever imagine.
Right.
I love that card with all my heart. I'm going to play eRieekan Yoda. So, like, what are the upgrades? What are the supports? Tell us a little bit about what's in this deck, because Mill's hot, and I'm really excited, and I want to know.
You're right. It does have, like, your force misdirections. It plays your scouts, and it does the chance cube and the C3PO trick, as most standard stock decks do. Stock mill. But he's got some other little spice. Minion, he's such an interesting cat, man, and the way he plays it's very interesting to watch. He likes to play a lot of one-ofs because he likes to have a lot of options. So his decks never fit a stock build.
Yeah, there's 9 one-ofs in this deck.
Yeah.
So
it's got to be 10 one-ofs. Yeah, I mean, it's an aggressive build. It's got all of your basic cards that you would expect, cautions, crate dragon howls.
That's a one we talked about for the 3-wide mill.
Yeah.
If you're really honest about it, it basically is pay 0, mill 2 off the top of their deck.
Right.
Yeah, that's really good. Well, think about this. Right now, you can either pay 3 resources to mill 4 cards off the top of their deck, or you can pay 0 to threaten to remove a die they really want, which means they're probably going to mill, and you can do that twice. So you could pay 0 for 4, or you could pay 3 for 4. Like, I would probably pay 0.
The problem is if there's situations where you need it to remove the die and you can't, and it's like your only removal kind of thing, that's when you're just oh, I just wish you were something better.
Yeah. But I wouldn't play it like that. I would always play it early just to get the free mill.
Yep.
Well, I mean, you don't always draw it when you want to draw it either.
The other thing he has in this that works really well that most of the other mill decks are not playing, since he's running Reichen and Yoda, he's also got Spynet, which works really well in that deck.
Oh, yeah.
Because you got a lot of focus sides in there.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, and it was really impressive. It ran smoothly all day. Yeah, I mean, he went undefeated with it.
Yeah, we talked about putting that in the 3-wide hero mill too, but the problem was there's only 2 dice that have focus, and ERieekan is a 30% chance, and Yoda's even worse, and you're not going to do anything with the partisan. So it's like, I don't think that's a good deck slot just because of the inconsistency. But if you're running 4 dice, double ERieekan, double Yoda, that is a much higher potential to hit. And if you can mill them, then you can make money off of Scrap Heap. ERieekan, you activate ERieekan, you mill 1, you get $1 from Scrap Heap, you hit the focus, you can hit him for another one with Spynet. If you got 2 Spynets, that's 3 cards right there, and then you roll out the Yoda, and if you get double specials, that's another 2 cards. So you've just taken 5 cards out of their deck, and then you can either get $2 or 2 shields or $1 shield. Like, so many good things are happening here.
Yeah, another thing with that is a card that he won the game against me with is Determination.
Yeah.
It's a little known blue card that if you have a die showing focus, resolve one of your dice as any side.
Yep.
So it's essentially your third C3PO in there.
Yep.
So we kind of talked to him a little bit about the deck, and he was just saying that he can burn through the deck pretty quickly. He just needs to be able to get 5 cards out of their hand at the end of the game.
Yeah, he said the way he plays that deck is he doesn't concern himself really with the hand. He just knows he needs to get 5 out at the end. Like that's where he's aiming, is to the deck's going to be burned out. You're going to have 5 cards left. The rest of the deck has to focus on that.
So since he can't run yellow, and that means no hyperspace jump, no easy pickings, what's his mitigation look like? Because the best card he probably has, like no vandalize even. So you've got like fall back, mislead, unbreakable, crash landing.
All those cards you just said, he's not playing any of those.
Yeah, all those cards you're seeing.
Whoa.
So yeah, he was running Mind Trick in this. So because generally against the mill, most people are going to try and flood the pool with as many dice as they can, because you're going to try and get out any upgrade support you can so you can flood and try and overwhelm them. So he ran Mind Trick, split their pool, and just immediately nerfed the amount of dice they have. What was that one?
The blue support, when you roll a shield, turn a die, something.
Yeah, your eyes can deceive you. He was also running that, so he had board state dice manipulation.
Was he running Yoda's hut?
Yes.
Yeah, that's a good card.
Yeah. He also had 1 copy of emergency evacuation in there too.
Yeah, I was about to say, is he running emergency evac? Like that's a monstrous blow. If you just like roll out, get your god roll, and you're like, yeah, emergency evac. Oh,
yeah, he blew me out with that card.
Yeah.
Like I had probably 12 damage showing any emergency evacuation, and I was like, okay.
If you get that scrap heap out early, like you get $2 extra per turn, that's $4. You're sitting on easily 4 to 6 resources per turn. You can use Yoda to make more money. Like you can afford to pay for these like really expensive cards.
Yeah, no scrap heap in here either.
What?
I'm telling you, this guy Minion, like he will play. It just seems like he goes and grabs a box of cards, and then shuffles them up, and somehow they just completely work exactly the way he wants them to.
I would love to get him and Minion, like get Sugi and Minion to play a game on TTS or something. Like that would be awesome.
Yeah, Minion just draws a random card from the game.
Just so you can see what we're talking about. Like the guy's like on a different plane, man. I don't know. He plays some crazy stuff, and he gets us every time.
Like he was the first person to bring up R2P2 in our area, and he laid that deck out for us, and we looked at that and like, this is a pile of garbage. Yeah, this is a hot steaming pile of garbage.
And then I was stuck on it for 3 months.
Yeah, and then we made some twists and changes, and then it became what it was. But it's like he loves medical droid. I just don't know, man. Like, and obviously you got C3PO and scouts and things like that in there. Basically it's just burn through their deck as quickly as possible, and then somehow get those last 5 cards out. You're making resources.
That's a good mill.
You're making resources. You're making shields. You're just kind of doing your thing. Stay alive. I think he maybe lost. He wouldn't lose a character until probably the last round of the game.
Yeah, he actually said he didn't lose a character until the last round of any match.
Yeah, I mean it's shields and mill and mill and mill and then shields and a little bit of focus,
and then reload your shields again.
Yeah.
So you guys want to get on TTS after this?
I'll see if I can get you guys in touch.
I would love that. That sounds fun.
But yeah, I mean, he went through the Swiss and got paired against the
Yoda
Chewies and just burned through him. Like they admitted that they hadn't tested that against Mill. I mean, I'm glad that they kind of came up here with that, and
it was awesome.
Yeah, I mean they're obviously good players. 2 out of 3 made it to the top 4, and it's an interesting deck. But again, if you're not running damage sides, Chewie's got another blank on him. So
tell us a little bit about what that deck does, actually.
So I mean, it's a yellow blue like force throw Chewie
like special chaining, right?
Special chaining, but they weren't running second chance in the list.
Mm-mm.
They decided that
you have to,
right? Because Chewie's pretty hefty as he is, and you can do enough shields in there that you don't really need it.
Right.
But and then it's cunning. It's another cunning list essentially, right?
And Roguish Charm, which was a card I had to actually look up when I saw the first one of them drop that. I was like, oh my god, that's one of those legacy rares I never looked at. Let's see what this does. And I pulled it out, and there's a lot of on-board mitigation in that deck with the special chaining. So I mean, effectively what they're trying to do is chain Chewie's special with either a force throw, a cunning, or a roguish charm, so they can actually deal damage to the character and then remove the dice. They would prefer to do it with the force throw so they can deal the damage twice to the character. But if not, they'll roll you to the pay side, deal damage with Chewbacca for rolling it to the pay side, then remove it with roguish charm and gain a resource.
Roguish charm is like so expensive and so bad for everything else, though. That just seems a little too.
But I mean, it's one of those things, right? I mean, if you need dice mitigation on board, because that's effectively what you're using the force throw for, that gives you a secondary option.
Yeah, when I played against it, I just didn't play my specials, like my ability upgrades. Even on the Rise Again, it was just to get a card on them that I could overwrite for a heirloom or something along those lines, or a Maul Saber. You're not using any of my specials. Like, you can try to Chewie me, but it's probably not going to happen. Yeah, I mean, I was able to beat it. I only played against the one that didn't make the top cut, but it's the same deck. It was interesting. I don't know if they'll continue to play with how bad it showed against Mill, but if it's not a Mill heavy meta that you're going into, which we're kind of turning into, it depends on if the Sabine Ezra's just completely knocked the Mill out of the meta, but it's a good option, right? If you don't have a lot of Mill. I mean, it was awesome. Out of the 15 people, we had a pretty, considering that the 3 people brought the same deck, it was a pretty diverse field, and it was good that we got essentially 3 metas coming out for, just a regular old Saturday tournament, no regional, no nothing. And we got to see what everybody's looking at just before the Maryland regional.
Yeah. Well, that's kind of why we wanted to do it that way. We wanted to have kind of like a decent tune-up for everybody that's planning on Maryland to at least come down and intermingle with some other metas and see how they're stacking up, right? I mean, that was the purpose of it. And I think we succeeded with that. Hopefully next time the weather works out a little bit better and some other people can show up. But I mean, at what we had, I feel like we had, some of the best players regionally that we could have asked for.
That is super cool. All right. Well, that pretty much wraps up the show. So thank you everyone for joining us. Thank you everyone for listening. We'd like to give a huge shout out to our friends Jackalmen Games on YouTube. We'll have a link for them in the show notes. Thank you to our Patreons for supporting us. Thank you to our sponsors, Ultimate Guard and Cool Stuff Inc., for helping us get to these events and cover them. And thank you to everyone for listening. We are so excited for all of the new stuff that's going to be happening in this new upcoming meta. So we will see you next week. May the Force be with you.
Ready.
Thought we were in trouble there for a second, but it's fine. We're fine.